Good morning, guys. Once again, welcome to Career Counseling Online Morning Vibes. Hopefully, you guys are all doing fantastic, staying back at home. Now, we are doing great ourselves at our end. All right, thank you so much. Yes, see, today, what we are going to talk about is I generally talk about this in seminars as to the exit strategy. Now, this exit strategy is not related to your exit or your exit interview or your exit from your current organization. See, I have been working with a lot of people who and one of their brothers or one of their relatives are into business. Now, this pandemic has impacted business and profession likewise. Okay, so I got a call from a friend of mine, and literally they are into manufacturing products, and they are the fourth generation into this business. They are into manufacturing of corrugated boxes. Right now, we were talking about the ill effects of this pandemic, the economic crisis that they are also facing. See, his production site is closed down, and but the workers are there, the laborers are there, and he's worried about their whereabouts. I mean, in terms of see, when there is no production, how to go about paying their wages, how to, because many are there who are working on daily wages basis. Okay, so the thing is, while we were talking about this, certain points came out, like I was talking about, like, who's helping you out now into your business, and who's taking all these kind of decisions and so on. Because last I spoke to this guy, it was a couple of years ago. His father passed away, unfortunately, a couple of months back. So since then, his brother is into this business, so it's more or less like a family business only. Now, the thing is, while discussing all these things, we came across a lot of other conversations as to the difficulties faced, the kind of challenges that they are facing. So what I understood is, see, I knew his father personally, and the thing is, he was into the business all by himself. He was handling all the things. He was looking into production, he was looking into operations, he was also into the finance decision making, and he was into client meets and everything. So the thing is, when he expired suddenly out of a cardiac arrest, when my friend had to join in, because he was into a job at that time, then he had to join in to the family business, and his brother later on joined in. So there was a lot of wrong decisions from their part. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a wrong decision, but the thing is, I believe they could have easily taken a better decision if they were involved into the operation, they were involved into the whole procedure of the business. Okay, see, the main thing is, I believe his father always wanted a different kind of role altogether for him, or maybe he thought that the business was not the cup of tea for. But the thing is, we need to understand, when you are running a family-based, generation-based business, you need to understand that, see, if you are not preparing the next generation, okay, then they, unfortunately, in a situation when you are no more, when they walk in, quite vulnerable, right? I mean, they are more prone to wrong decision making, they're more prone to in credit losses, they're more prone to not understanding the client's intention, customer experience, and everything gets affected, right? Even the production gets affected. Now, the thing is, see, basically, when I believe, when you are in a generation old family business, see, three basic points have to be considered very, very exclusively, I believe. I mean, that brought up the topic of today, is like passing on the torch, I would rather say. See, even if we go back into the history, right? See, we have always seen the kingdom being handed over to the prince, okay? And while the prince enjoyed all the luxury, everything, see, they also had to go through a rigorous training. They also had to go through training as to physical fitness, as to understanding the economy, the finance part, the decision making, and they were regularly a part of the court when the court sessions were being conducted by their father, who was the king. See, the thing is, we are today forgetting the history. Like I wouldn't say this is specific to our country, but the problem that we are facing globally is because globally there is a tendency to forget the past, right? The past history, and that is where exactly all the solutions of today's lies. We need to understand one thing: the situation which is arising today, I mean, this is nothing very new. I mean, this in a different magnitude appeared a couple of years back, right? I mean, and somebody literally worked on it, somebody literally had the problem solved, and people were again back to normal operations and so on. The thing is, if we draw a reference from the history, what happens is we are we are already half the way into a winning mode, because we already know what happened, why did it all happen, and what was the kind of solution which were adopted by the then king, ruler, or whosoever was ruling. Now the thing is, see, if we go by the old history, it has always been seen or practiced within the kingdom or within the royal family, that there is always a danger. There is always a danger of the kingdom being being snatched away, being fought over, being won over by someone else, right? So in those terms, the kings knew that if the prince who was going to be the next king is not made ready, right, whether it is let's say whether it is a physical training, whether it is economics, whether it is the social concept. See, the thing is, then one fine day, if something happens to the king, if the prince is asked to rule the kingdom, then he would take wrong decisions, which would might trigger anguish and anger within the people who were then living pretty happily within the kingdom, right? So a revolt may rise. So a king in the past history, a king was always triggered by this factor, always had this fear factor working on driving behind, like they always wanted to avoid the revolt, because revolt would if it is a war outside, it can be fought with soldiers, it can be fought with all the resources that the king has. But the thing is, when it's an internal revolt, I mean, the risk of losses there, because then it is happening within. Now what it does is, if a revolt breaks up, it actually makes the kingdom vulnerable from outside attack. We have seen in history that is happening. I mean, in India also, if we go by the way India came under the British rule and so on, I mean, there is a lot of concept behind it, and I'm not an historian, but the generic reading of history has revealed that at that time, when the British rule came into India for conducting commerce, for conducting business, all the Maharajas, all the kings, all the rulers were having a fight within themselves, right? The states were fighting within themselves. Even within the state, there were revolts, and they were fighting over landlords, they were fighting with the zamindars, they were fighting with the land borders and so on. Now what it did is, it gave the British Empire a lot of scope to understand the loopholes of India. Like, there were loopholes of India at that time, even existing right now also, and they picked up all those points to either attack India through corruption, through military force, through economic pressure, through international pressure, and so on. So, and we know all what happened then. See, internal fight actually handed over the whole country, and we were into a slavery for almost 200 years, right? So drawing back the history, reference from the history, I would say, see, in terms of management, like, we are not here to talk about history, we are drawing a reference from history, and how it is correlated, or how is it related to the modern business dynamics. See, the first thing is, when a business is to be handed over to the next generation, the first thing that needs to be done is the next generation has to be trained. The next generation has to be trained with the business system. They have to be well versed with what is the process which is going on, what are the kind of resources which are being used, what are the kind of software that is being involved, what is the kind of technology which the industry incorporates. Because a manufacturing industry which is into, let's say, corrugated paper box, it would not be the same as a manufacturing industry or a company who is manufacturing LEDs. Right now, the thing is, see, the next generation has to be trained. Next generation has to be trained with the process, with the system which goes on within this business. Now, many a times what happens is the first generation or the second generation is not ready to train the next generation, fearing that they might be taking a wrong decision which might be impacting the business in terms of credibility, in terms of economic growth, in terms of expansion, in terms of customer experience. Now, the thing is, if they are not learning today, when, God forbid, in your absence, when this person joins, he will be making more mistakes, and those mistakes might result in a shutdown or a closure of a business. Rather than that, why not train them right now into the process? Okay, so if we go by history again, we have seen the old, even if we go by the Indian business history also, we have seen the communities, business communities, training their next generation in a let's say, what the term used is under the brother, under the watchful eye of a brother. Now, the thing is, what this means is, if the organization has the two kind of functionality, which is the core business and which is the open business. Okay, the core business business part involves the decision making, right, and the open business part involves the operational part. Now, what is suggested is involving the next generation into the operations part gradually, right, gradually from the base, so that they know the nitty-gritty of the process which is being followed in the organization. See, when they know the procedure from the grassroots, right, tomorrow, or in a couple of years, when they are in a position where their decision matters, they know that how the process works, because they then know that, well, the machine that the laborers are complaining about lack of productivity from the machine. Well, when I was looking into the operation, the machine had this optimal productivity of this, because we were taking care of these machines in this way. The annual maintenance contract was renewed, the annual repairing was done. So then he takes a very very constructive decision in terms of understanding the situation, rather than just depending on some person with a degree or a certificate in the management and telling that, oh, your process, this part is going wrong. See, if the person has already learned that from the grassroots, he would have immediately understood, like, what is going wrong. Is it a mechanical problem? Is it a resource problem? Is it a labor problem? Because there are a lot of aspects which contributes to a problem, to a challenge, right? So this person, when he goes in a director position, or let's say a decision making board member, he understands the process at a grassroots level. So he knows whether it is an excuse, whether this is a real situation, or whether this is a solvable problem, and then he might take a solution. See, if a machine is constantly producing low, it might be that people are overlooking the depreciation part. See, this guy might be understanding, well, when I was looking into the operations, this machine used to provide this. So he might be asking the production manager, okay, pull out the 5 years data, and he can do a comparison as to every year the production, if it is decreasing, irrespective of constant repair, irrespective of constant annual maintenance also, that means the machine's internal possibilities of producing the desired quantity is decreasing. That is what we call a depreciation. Now, if it is a depreciating machine constantly, and if you are spending more on repair and annual maintenance rather than so it would be a good decision to accumulate that fund and get a new machine, sell it off, right, at even when it is working, because then the organization might be able to get some price or a value against the depreciation machine also, rather than selling it as a scrap and the whole system going out of the production. Now, the second part comes as emphasis on education. See, we need to understand one thing: every generation is getting a scope for education better and better. See, the kind of opportunities which my father got, right? I have got much better opportunity than what he got. Right, today my son during this pandemic is going through online classroom education, online learning, but this thing was not ever possible when I was studying. If there was any kind of chaos, if the college is closed for 1 day or 2 day or 5 days or 7 days also, see, there was no way that my studies could carry on. Yes, I could study at home, but the thing is the teachers cannot reach us. Now you see the teachers are reaching the students across India, across the globe, to the students study room also through either conference call or a video call or so on. So the thing is, I believe the business, generation needs to consider emphasis on education as one big, investment for the future returns. It is not an expense. See, if it is, invested, if the organization is investing into education, better understanding. See, the resource or the next generation will come out very resourceful with new thoughts, with new thought procedure, with new understanding of technology, with new understanding of the business dynamics, which we might not even know or we might not even think. See, that is the reason why out of box happens only when you are equipped with information, equipped with updated technology knowledge, updated dynamics, updated rules and procedure. So when an investment is done on education, it has to be considered as a big investment, not as an expense. Third and foremost, the last point I would say, for the directors or for the decision makers, for the founders, I know it's very hard. I mean, honestly speaking, I being a founder myself, see, I founded my startup organization, Rangamati, almost 8 years back, right? Even today, I feel that everything I have to be in it. So one fine day, if I have to think myself to walk out, how to plan my exit, it will be very difficult. It will be very difficult, just like a parent allowing their children to go and work in a different country or study in a different state. See, they always face this problem. They always face this pang of detachment, this pang of being cut off. Right. So I, being a director, I being the founder, I understand how it would be painful for me. But the thing is, exit strategy has to be planned prior, before either I am kicked out or I am forced to leave or I am no more. See, with that, what will happen is I can move on, or the directors or the decision makers, the founders can move on from controlling the business to mentoring the business position. Right, in that way, you would be respected, they would be considered, their opinion would be considered, and they can be in a much more, I would say, contributive mode when they move into a mentoring position. When that happens, see, the organization grows with your experience or with the founder's experience, years of experience. If we go by, let's say, just an example, by the Tata Group. See, the way we see knowledge, the way we see the hierarchy being handed over, it's a phenomenal example which is set, right? So it is always handed over. Tata Groups have been always handed over to very, very responsible, very, very capable and capable, kind of people who are capable of taking decisions in terms of the employees of Tata, in terms of the organizational benefit and international client exposure, client experience, and as well as the national experience and client exposure. See, that's the reason. See, Tata has been diversified into so many products. They could only do this because they always, even Mr. Ratan Tata had a very nice exit plan. We will talk about that someday in our video. He had a very wonderful exit plan on which he worked on. He handed over his responsibilities, and before that there was a lot of mentoring, that there was a lot of parallel budding and so on. So the thing is, if you are working on a exit strategy. And if you know what will that do is that will also give a motivation or encouragement to the next generation to be prepared themselves, that they know that, see, my responsibilities are going to change, my expectations from me are going to change. I have to be deliverable, I have to think constructive, I have to be contributive. So that makes up the mindset, that makes them much more accountable, rather than they just suddenly out of just a occasion like a death or a timely demise, or anyway the decision maker is going off the grid, and then this generation walking in taking a wrong decision. Much better than this is, like, see, if we take about Narayan Murthy, Krishnamurti, and Mr. Bill Gates also, they all framed their exit plan strategy such a way that they moved in to from the main business developer to visionaries, right? Even they moved on to being the mentors, even like I used to work with an organization wherein I saw the director, I literally saw the director move gradually to different positions. And then right now what I see is he's holding a position, simply it's written visionary. Now that is a very strong impulse which goes across the organization, across the new generation, even to the person, the founder or the director, that my expectation from the organization now has to be dealt by this next generation, and the organization's expectation from me is they want the experience that I have, overall experience, to be all boiled down to a very beneficial part for the organization, for the employee, for the customers. So the main thing is 3 points to be considered by family generation based business is, first is you need to train the next generation to be ready for the operation, for the decision making. Second is emphasis on education, right? And third is exit strategy for the directors or the founders, right? With that note today, guys, write to us at careercounselingonline at gmail.com with the points that you'd like to talk about, that you would like to hear my opinions on. And you can join our Facebook group, which is Career Counseling Online, and the Facebook page is also there by the same name. And as I mentioned, LinkedIn has a very interactive group by the same name as Career Counseling Online. You can join there. A lot of activities are happening these days, internal activities as to exchange of information, exchange of job opportunities, and talking with higher professionals and so on. So guys, you can join that. And with that note today, I'll leave you with a thought, like, what would you think the best exit strategy for a founder would be, wherein the founder is mandatorily contributing the same way, the way he was running his business. So once again, the question is, what would you think as the best exit strategy for a founder or a director, for him to be constructive and